Well, hello folks. We're back at dealing with chimney cleaning and preparation for burning the wood stove for the winter season. So this is the main stove that we have in our house. It's country hearth. Yeah, let me say that again. Hearth. It's 2,500 square foot model. It does heat the whole house. Has a fairly good sized wood box. As you can see, to load it, when we load it at night, we can get through the night. If we have good solid hardwoods in there, it will burn all night long. And even in the coldest winter, can still keep this room, our living room, which is ground level, at about 75 degrees. So it's very adequate for our needs. But we've got some work to do before we're ready to burn it. Let me just pan up here to the chimney. I've got to pull the stovepipe off of here. As you remember from the first video, I cleaned the chimney from the top down, so all that soot, whatever came down through, is still sitting in there. I got to pull that off and vacuum that out. There will be some creosote buildup in here, I'm sure, so I've got to take all the piping off of here all the way down to the top of the stove and clean all that out so that that's clear to go. In addition, what this is right here is called a stack heater. It adds extra heat to the room because as the hot exhaust gases come off the stove, they go up through there, and then there's a blower in the back that forces air through these baffles here, these holes there, and it heats the air. Of course, it's a bit of a convection type of heating system where the hot air is exchanged with the cooler room air, and it warms that and it blows that out into the room. So that's supplemental heat. It's on a thermostat, so when the stovepipe heats up to a certain temperature, it kicks on. When it gets below that, whatever that temperature is, then it turns back off. So it was a good investment. It's added heat and efficiency to the stove, so I've got to get that cleaned. And also this particular type of stove here, if you notice on the back there, that is a blower fan that was installed. I like this newer style with the stove where they've got this heat shield on the back. It doubles as a heat shield and also a convection source. That blower fan brings the hot air up through this slot in the back of the stove, blows it from the back over across the face of the stove. Again, it adds more hot air to the room. So basically you've got a dual type of heat that this stove is producing. The heat exchange from the hot wood to the metal here, to the plate steel, that's radiant heat. It's exchanging, and then it radiates the heat through the room. And then with the two fans, you've also got the convection of the blowing. So between the two, it makes the stove fairly efficient. In addition, I've got some repairs I have to do here in addition to the cleaning. As you can see, the top of the stove is all rusted again. It wasn't a very expensive stove, I certainly admit that. So I've had to do maintenance on it. We keep this pot on the top there, this cast iron pot filled with water, to add some humidity to the room, because obviously the wood stove dries the air out quite a bit in the house. And so what we need to do here is keep that filled with water. Sometimes if it's stove's burning hot, it'll spill over and get on the stove, and then we get that rust. So I've got to scrape all that rust off, and as you can see, I'm going to repaint the top with high temp black paint, Rust-Oleum paint. That'll do the job and protect it. In addition, I also have a couple of the fire bricks in the stove itself that are broken in the back, just as from shoving wood in, throwing wood in. They just break from time to time, so I have to replace them. They're not expensive or difficult to change. And also in the underside of the heat box, underneath here, down in the top of the stove, there is a piece of specialty insulation board there that's to hold the heat rather than have it just escape as quickly. It helps it to recirculate and makes the stove more efficient. That's gotten damaged over the years. This stove's been in use for 4 years now, so That's gotten damaged, so I have to replace that. That's on order. I can't, that's nothing I could get locally. I had to order it and have it shipped. So when I get that, I'll put that in too. That just requires pulling a couple of the air transfer tubes out of the top and then put it in and replace them. So other than that, the stove shouldn't need much else. Some cleaning up. I mean, when we haven't been burning it all summer, it's kind of gotten some dust and some other dirt and grime on it with all the humidity and problems we've had with mold and mildew with this very hot summer. This stove's taken a beating too. So I'll walk you through the process as I do the cleaning and the repairs here so you can see. As you can see, we haven't redone the floor here yet. We got rid of the old carpet that was in here, and we haven't redone the floor in the living room here yet. This is on this side. This is the original tongue and groove floorboards. On this side, I had repaired the floor from some rot a number of years ago, and that's got plywood and then Luan over it. So it's something that's down the road a project to do. But what we did to make the stove safe in here, remember this is an old house with some very dry wood, so the last thing we need is fire because of the wood stove. What I did is I got some patio block and I made a pedestal for the stove to protect the wood floor, and as you can see, it extends out to the front so that any kind of sparks or pieces of burning wood that might fall out of the stove are going to land on there rather than on the wood floor. That you can get a hearth for these stoves. They're about $300-400, I think, that do the same thing. This was a whole lot cheaper, just taking these patio block, and I actually put 2 layers there in the center for extra protection. So that gives us the protection on the floor from overheating. The other good thing, as I said, is this heat shield here on the back. That makes it possible to put the stove within 12 inches of an existing wall. If that weren't there, the old style of wood stoves, you had to be, I think, 2 to 3 feet away from a wall so that it wouldn't overheat. But because of that, this wood back here, this old woodwork back here, never gets too hot that I have to worry about it. Up in the ceiling here, and we're still working on this living room to redo the ceiling. To protect the ceiling above from too much heat coming off this stove is this insulated board. It's actually steel faced, and then it's got a type of insulation board underneath it, and it's got 1-inch spacers up here before it attaches to the floor joists, so air can circulate in between this panel and the wood, so that keeps it cool, that keeps it safe. So anytime you're doing a wood stove in the house and you have a low ceiling like this, you're going to need some type of a panel like this. I just went with the least expensive one, just a basic black one. You can get them that they have different colors and textures and so on, depending what you want to spend. But this is adequate for my needs to keep the house safe from any kind of wood getting overheated. So that's how the system has worked for us well for 4 years. We're going into our 5th year with this, and we're heating a probably a 2,300 square foot house, 3 stories with this. We do have electric heat in here too, obviously, that we can turn on at any time. And sometimes the 3rd floor bedrooms, they use the heat a little bit for supplemental heating when it does get really cold. But as we've done more improvements with insulation and modern windows, that's been more minimal. I've also cut a few holes in the ceiling here and in one of the other rooms here up through, so that I have a floor register, basically just a floor duct, so that the hot air can rise more efficiently up through the ceiling here to bedrooms upstairs and even up to the 3rd floor. So just allowing the rising heat to work its way up there. Also, the stairways form an excellent chimney for that to happen too. So the system is working fairly well for us, and as I've said before, rather than paying for oil heat or godly prices for electricity with electric heat in an old farmhouse in the wintertime. We've got efficient heat with the wood stove. We've got a multiple year supply, a multitudinous supply of wood here on the farm. So we've got plenty of fuel. It just has to be cut, split, and seasoned, and that's good exercise and good work to get you out in the fresh air and nature. So as long as I'm able to do it, we'll keep doing it. And this keeps the house warm, very warm, through the long winter months. So far we haven't needed it. We're into the second week of October now. We've had a couple cool nights that were in the 40s, but the house still stayed in the 60s, so it was manageable. But they are talking that by this coming weekend we're going to have colder temperatures. Usually when it gets into the low 40s outside or less, I have to start burning wood to keep the house warm. And then they're also talking a couple days where the highs are only going to be in the 50s, so that would make the house chilly after a while. It wouldn't heat up enough during the day if it didn't get into the 60s and 70s. So I will have to start burning probably by the weekend. So I've got to get this work done this week, get this thing ready to go, and then we'll be all set for another winter of a nice warm house, courtesy of good quality firewood. All right, we'll pick this up with the next phase here. I'll show you how this cleaning and repair job continues. Thanks for watching. All right, I've gotten the pipe assembly off the stove now. As you can see, there is a fair amount of soot down in here. Nothing major though, nothing close to blocking, but that'll have to be cleaned out. And if we go up here and you look into the chimney, you can see the amount of soot that came down the chimney from cleaning with the wire brush. So there's a fair amount in there. I'm going to have to get my shop vac to clean it, and then I'll also clean with a brush around this sleeve here, and then that'll be done. I'll take you outside in a minute. I pulled the stove assembly and put it out on the picnic table so I can clean it out there to minimize the mess in the house. But let me show you the amount of buildup that's happened in that as well. Alright, this stove pipe has come apart. I pulled it apart in two pieces. This is the elbow, of course, that was up to the chimney, and this is from the stack heater down to the stove itself. So I haven't done anything yet. If you look in here, you can see that there is a fair amount of soot buildup in there and other junk. Some of that probably fell down from the upstairs chimney too. It's not too bad considering. There's the other side of the pipe. You can see the soot and the creosote around the outside there. How that's built up, that'll have to be gone over. I have a wire brush right there that'll take through that. This is the top of the stack heater here. You can see there is a buildup in there. I'll clean that with probably a dust brush, whatever it takes to get it out of there. And as I said, the way this works is the hot exhaust coming from the stove is coming up through this way, and as it does, the fan is blowing. There are series of three pipes here that come through the middle of this, and the fan is blowing the cooler room air through those, and they absorb some of the heat of the hot gases coming up through, and then what comes out of the front here is warmer air to enhance the temperature in the room. So this will take a good cleaning too, not just here, but I'll also pull the screen off here and clean this, and then in the back here where the fan is, I will pull that. There's a plate on this side, and I think that I can get in, if I remember correctly how I did it. I'll clean all that out because there is buildup of gunk and dust and other oils and things like that, so that I don't want the electric motor to clog up on me either. So I've got to do that. This is a once-a-year project. I'm assuming that I have to do it every year. I do it every year in preparation for burning season. And the buildup is typical. It's not excessive considering how long and how hot we burned the stove from, let's say, last October through May of this year. I don't usually pull the stove apart to clean it during the heating season. I do use those fireplace burning logs with the creosote burning logs or creosote eliminating logs, whatever you want to call them, that they sell. I'll do maybe 2 of those during the course of the heating season to try to eliminate the buildup. But as you can see, the pipes are still fairly open. I could burn it safely now yet, but there's no sense taking any chances of having it constrict further. We'll get back to full draft capability when I get this stuff cleaned out, so we'll be good for another year. And again, the other key to doing this to keep your wood stove safe is you must burn quality firewood. It doesn't have to be the highest grades of stuff. I don't always burn oak. I wish I could burn just oak in here, that it would be wonderful, but I don't have that much oak here on the farm, so I've got to do other hardwoods. But as long as they're hardwoods, so that it minimizes the amount of sap is still in the wood after it's cut down, like the softwoods have, and as long as it's cured, as long as it's dried, that it's seasoned well, that you don't have a lot of extra moisture in it. If you have those 2 factors working for you, that you've got good quality wood that's dry, this is the result you get. You can get through a whole season with a minimal buildup of creosote or soot, and then you're safe and you have good efficient heat in your house. So I'll pick this back up again after I have these things cleaned, and you can see what it'll look like before I put them back together, and we'll go on to the next step. Alright, well, we've got the cleaning done. As you can see, I also sanded this top down. It's ready for spray paint. I won't do that until I put all the pipes back in, because I might have to touch up a few spots on the pipes. So I'll put everything in place first and then do that. And if you look up in here, you can see that, I'll zoom in again if I can, you can see that that's pretty well now cleaned out. The soot that was in there was typical, but my chimney's now ready to go. And also we've got these pipes cleaned out too. As you can see, they're ready to go. I've got to do some touch-up spray painting on them, but I'll do that after they're in place. But other than that, the system is ready to be put back together. I still have to clean out the old ash that's in the stove and replace the fire bricks before I burn it, and I'm still going to have to wait for that panel, the insulation panel for the top inside of the stove. Obviously I can burn without it in, but it's not right, so that's going to have to be finished too at some point. So other than that, we'll be ready to be able to burn today if we needed to. Alright, so I'll come back to you when those things are. Stove's just about done. Everything's put back together, as you can see. Pipes are back in, all cleaned. I put a coat of paint on the stove pipe and a couple coats of paint on the top here. You can see it's still got to dry a bit more. As you can also see, I was able to pull a couple broken fire bricks out and replace them with new ones. If you can see in there or not, probably not too well. And it's all cleaned out, so it's basically ready to use. Just want to clean up the around the area a bit, and then also the door. What you get with a wood stove sometimes is the door glass gets kind of smoky or covered with black soot, and the easiest way to clean that so that you have a nice clear view of your wood burning is actually ammonia. Use ammonia from the bottle, you know, with a sponge or paper towel, whatever. Just be careful on your hands because it's strong, but it'll clean all it off and make your glass nice and clean. It's stronger than glass cleaner, so that's just a tip that my wife learned and we use. So this is it. I still of course have to put that piece of insulation baffle in the top when that comes, but other than that, it's ready to go for another year, and you got a chance to see it from up on top of the roof all the way down to here. Alright, thank you for watching. I guess the dogs are going nuts. Please subscribe to our